Hello and welcome to this edition of Ritter's Rant. The word and concept that I'll delve in today is hope. Um, and what gives me hope is the surprising outcome of the meeting that took place yesterday um, between Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump's special envoy to Russia, and Russian President Vladimir Putin. You know, even 12 hours before this meeting took place, the um, the speculation was that Witkoff would not be traveling to Moscow. Basically, you know, the Russian rejection of Donald Trump's bullying had made such a trip moot. There was no reason for it to take place because the answer was clear. And yet, as if Vladimir Putin was monitoring the situation and decided to throw a curveball, the Russian president suddenly gave a press conference where he said, "Look, if you want a ceasefire, and let's just be clear, Donald Trump is desperate for a ceasefire in Ukraine, not for all the reasons that he articulates about the dead and the suffering and this and that. It's because this would be a feather in the cap of his effort to get the Nobel Peace Prize. This is what Donald Trump wants more than anything else in the world. But he's not going to get it without getting a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. And the Russian president knows this. And so he basically said, if you want a ceasefire, it's really easy. You just have to get the Ukrainians to leave the totality of the territory of Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Lugansk, and to agree that they will not be part of NATO. The moment this is done, you have your ceasefire. Now, this is a massive departure from the Russian position prior to the Russian president speaking. Prior to this, as was noted in three separate Istanbul meetings between the Russian negotiation teams and Ukrainian negotiation teams, the Russians would only consider a ceasefire if the root causes of the conflict were identified and resolved. So it wasn't just about leaving the four territories that Russia, assumed control of constitutionally back in the fall of 2022. It's not just NATO. We're talking about demilitarization, the reduction of the Ukrainian armed forces from 700,000 today to a force of around 50,000, about denazification, literally the purging of the Banderist ideology from Ukrainian politics and Ukrainian society. A new election. The Russians had said that it's impossible to talk about a deal with a government headed by a president, Volodymyr Zelensky, who has no legitimacy constitutionally. And there were other commitments there, buffer zones, etc. Now these haven't gone away. I've been watching the naysayers and the critics. Vladimir Putin caved in. Oh, he gave up everything. No. All these conditions remain. The only difference now is that they will be dealt with in a post-ceasefire negotiation. It doesn't mean that Russia's forgotten this, that Russia's going to drop the ball. They won't. These demands are all there, and they're things that have to be worked through. But again, here's the genius of the Russian president. Because if he can get the United States to commit to making this ceasefire reality, putting pressure on the Ukrainians, putting pressure on Europe and NATO, Trump will have won a great victory, political victory for himself. And he will immediately delegate conflict termination to others. This won't be the front burner issue anymore. He will have won his peace prize, and then he will make sure that nobody messes with his peace prize. So the Russians will then just turn to people and say, you have to yield to our demands. Our demands are non-negotiable. And the Ukrainians and their European masters won't have daddy to look up to because daddy already walked away. Daddy got what daddy wanted. And without U.S. backing, there's really nothing more that they could do. They can threaten to return to war, but I have a feeling too that the Russians know what they're doing here as well. That once this ceasefire takes place and the Ukrainian people have a chance to pause and understand the reality of what has happened to them because of this war, they won't allow their president to take them back down that path. So I think that, I am hopeful that we are on a road towards the end of this conflict. This isn't just about ending the conflict between the Russians and the Ukrainians. This is about ending a proxy war between Russia and the United States. I mean, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has called it this. I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. He has said that the Ukrainian conflict is a proxy war between the United States and Russia, with Ukraine as the proxy. This is about ending a state of near open hostility between NATO and Europe and Russia, allowing Europe now to liberate itself from the chains of conflict that it has wrapped itself in. I mean, Europe today is talking about the possibility of war with Russia because of the Ukraine conflict. NATO is talking about the need to enlarge and be able to threaten Russia, including the exclave of Kaliningrad, because of Ukraine. But if you could take the Ukraine conflict off, and if from the Ukraine conflict, there's a potential to redefine what a European security framework would look like that's acceptable to all parties, I think some of the impetus towards NATO to be aggressive towards Russia will be eliminated. And then the fiscal irresponsibility of trying to build a military in a time of peace will become obvious to the citizens of nations who are being asked to give up their pensions, give up their vacations, give up the social safety nets that they've enjoyed for decades. I think that you're going to see Europe going through its own transformation away from conflict towards peace. And for the United States, there's a reason why Kirill Dmitriev is the guy who is interfacing with Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump. And that's because he's a businessman. And he understands the potential of the economic benefits that can accrue if this conflict can be brought to an end. And that will be to the benefit of the United States and Russia. It'll also, I think, start creating an atmosphere of reality. Peace is far more realistic than war. War brings about fantasy, visions of grandeur, the artificiality of dominance and things of this nature. Peace is about coexistence, compromise. And if you can eliminate the Ukrainian conflict and get the U.S.-Russian relationship now defined by parameters premised in peace, the hostility that Donald Trump has, for instance, to BRICS, the hostility he has to, Chinese economy. This hostility can be, I think, reduced, softened. Is this going to happen? Probably not. I mean, Donald Trump is his own worst enemy. Already we see Secretary of State Marco Rubio downplaying, Steve Witkoff's visit, trying to create obstacles about, Ukrainian and other parties. I think he means Europe's potential, opposition to this. And Donald Trump himself can say one thing one day, but say something completely different the other day. I think that, the odds are against, getting this wonderful, utopian outcome. But this time last week, we were talking about Ohio-class submarines being moved up to the Russian border. Earlier this week, we were talking about the Russians lifting their self-imposed moratorium on the deployment of intermediate-range missiles, the deployment of the Oreshnik missiles, the deployment of B-6112 nuclear bombs to Great Britain. We were talking about the possibility, the real possibility of nuclear war. We ain't talking about that right now. We're talking about peace. We're talking about the possibility of a meeting between President Donald Trump of the United States and President Vladimir Putin of Russia, in the United Arab Emirates. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that you have a senior official from the Emirati government in Moscow as we speak. And I think there's open talk about the United Arab Emirates serving as the host for a potential meeting that could take place as soon as next week. And if Trump and Putin can actually sit down and meet each other face to face, the sky's the limit on what they can agree to, good or bad, but probably good. You know, President Trump historically has not shown an ability to stand up to Vladimir Putin. Let's forget about his made-up conversation about how he told Putin that he would bomb the bovine excrement out of Moscow, etc. We know that when they did meet face-to-face in Helsinki, that Vladimir Putin emerged dominant in that meeting. One only has to look at the body language of the two leaders as they emerged from their one-on-one meeting to see that Putin was very confident and Donald Trump was less confident. Now, I'm hopeful that out of this meeting, Donald Trump will emerge confident because I'm hopeful of a positive outcome. I'm hopeful. Hope doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it does mean that you want it to happen. I do want peace more than I want a continuation of this conflict. Anyways, that's my rant. Next time a thought crosses my mind, I'll be sure to let you know.